Hey guys, Vincent here from thecreativedojo.net. Today in this video tutorial, we're going to be taking a look at how to create a very interesting and dynamic text animation or text transition using a plugin called Plexus in After Effects. So I've been getting a lot of questions and feedback on Plexus, a lot of requests to do tutorials and content over Plexus, which is a 3D particle system that you can find on aescripts.com. So I whipped up a quick animation. I got tons of positive feedback on it, and you guys have been requesting about how to do this in After Effects. So I'm going to show you guys how in this particular tutorial. So without further ado, let's go and take a look at what we're going to be creating today. So again, nothing too complex. It's actually very, very simple. Everything was created within After Effects using one text layer as well as Plexus. So it's very interesting, very easy to do. And if you're not familiar with Plexus, hopefully this will get you up and running with Plexus and how to use it in the basic workflows with using Plexus. So without further ado, let's go ahead and hop into After Effects here and look at how to create this within Plexus here. So I'm going to create a new composition. And I'll make it 720p. I'll call it main comp. 10 seconds long and hit OK. Now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and create our first text layer here. So I'm going to go to layer new and create a text layer, and I will call it Creative Dojo for this particular tutorial. Now one thing great about Plexus is that everything is non-destructive when you're working with text layers, meaning that we can go back in here and edit this text layer, and the transition will all remain the same and everything like that, and the text will update within the transition. So nothing is permanent, nothing is broken apart, and everything is editable and procedural as we would want it to be when editing stuff. So very great on that part. I'm going to go ahead and close the original demonstration here, and let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to select this text layer here. I will go ahead and do some quick modifications. We will also align it to the middle, just like that. And then we can select our text layer, go to Effect, apply Row by Plexus, and that will apply Plexus directly onto the text layer. Now right now you don't really see anything because Plexus has no geometry to display. So if you're not familiar with the Plexus workflow, essentially we have geometry, effectors, and renderer. Now geometry is the actual shape, the actual object that we're actually seeing. Effectors are things that affect the particular Plexus particle system, like effectors in Cinema 4D and whatnot. And the renderers are what actually renders the elements such as points, lines, beams, and all that stuff. So we'll take a look at that right now. So first of all, geometry. We want our geometry to be our text layer. Now text layers are considered paths within Plexus, so we'll select paths. And since Plexus is automatically applied to the text layer already, it's going to assume that the text layer is the path. So here we're all set. So now our geometry is actually our text layer. And right off the bat, it creates Plexus point renders by default. And as you can see, this does nothing more than just render points. If we turn that off, you can see that we have actually nothing here. So the points render just render points around our paths. So I'm going to go into the Plexus path object here, the geometry that we just created. I'm going to decrease the number of points on each mask because we have too many points on each mask here. So I'm going to turn down to maybe around 40. So we just have enough points to be able to read the text here. So that's okay. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to set the basic animation first with the Plexus stuff, and then we'll go back in and add the camera animation, color correction, grading, and stuff like that. So first of all, I'm going to go into the replication, and I will change the number of copies to 3. So we have 3 instances of this particular Plexus object here. And then we can also increase the extrusion depth. So I'm going to increase it pretty large here. Now I'll also go ahead and add a render. I like to add renderers, before I add the effectors, just so I can kind of see what I'm working with first. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go and add a lines renderer. And as you can see, that adds lines to addition to our points renderer. And as you can see, everything is module. So essentially, when you create new objects, they are added to the stack here, and you can rearrange the stacks, and they will render in that particular order, similar to After Effects. So I'm going to go into the maximum distance. I want to set to about 150. So it's going to connect points with the maximum distance of 150 away from each of those points. We can also change the maximum number of vertices to search. So how many points it's going to search for. I'm going to keep it, maybe around 8 for now. We can go back and change this. So right off the bat here, I'm going to change the line thickness to around 0.3. we want it to be kind of small at first so we can kind of see what we're working with. And this is looking good. Now I'm going to go ahead and add an effector. I'm going to apply a noise effector. And this will kind of randomize some of the vertices here. Now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the apply noise to axes to just the z-axis. So this noise effector here is just going to affect the z-axis of these points. So I'm going to increase the noise amplitude. And as you can see, it only affects in the z position here. It's not really moving things up or it's left or right, just the z. And we wanted to make it kind of large so we can kind of zoom through here. I'm going to create a temporary camera for now so we can kind of see just how large this is. So, you know, something like this is good. We will, you know, delete the camera for now, and we'll start right here. We'll leave this noise effector around this value here, and we'll go ahead and animate this value. So I'm going to go to the noise amplitude, set a keyframe from the noise amplitude at 0, 0. We'll also hit a keyframe for the extrude depth for the path object, and we will also go to the lines render, and we will also animate the line thickness, because when you get kind of close to the points here, you can see that the lines are pretty thick. So I'm going to hit a keyframe for that. We'll animate that as well, and we will also be animating a little bit more as we go here. So I'm going to move around 3.5 seconds or so, and I will actually set everything back to normal. So the noise amplitude will be 0. We will also change the line thickness back to maybe something higher, maybe 0.5. And then we'll change the extrude depth back to 0. So essentially in the beginning we have a lot of extrusion depth, we have a lot of noise amplitude in the z-axis, and as we progress we tone that down to 0. So we're back to where we started here. And we also animate the line thickness to kind of compensate. So in the beginning the line thickness is going to be kind of small, and then as we move forward they get back to normal. And that's cool. So let's go ahead and add another renderer here. We will go ahead and add a triangulation renderer, and this is only in Plexus version 2. So if you have Plexus version 1, you're not going to have this feature. And we'll do the exact same thing. We'll start, you know, in the beginning here. We'll find our triangulation renderer, and we will go ahead and animate the maximum distance, because right now it's a little bit too much. So maybe we'll start around maximum distance of 30. We'll move to this keyframe here, back to the final position, and we'll just tone it down. Something that creates a very interesting look. So now we have something like this. Very, very good. We'll also hit U on the keyboard to show all the keyframes. We'll ease all these keyframes, hit F9, and then we'll go into the graph editor, we'll go to the speed editor, and we'll just kind of ramp the ending up a little bit so we kind of have a smoother gradual end. So now we have something like this. And then we'll move around, you know, 2 seconds or 2.5 seconds or so. We'll stop right here, and then we'll go back to Plexus, and we will also add a few more effectors. So I'm going to close the path object here. We'll close the noise effector and everything like that. So now we're going to start fresh. We're going to add another noise effector, and then we'll also add a transform effector, which will kind of control the transform properties of the whole Plexus system here. I'm going to set a keyframe for the Z rotation, as well as the X translate and the Y translate, and you know, we'll leave it at that. We'll move around 2 seconds, and then I want to first of all tilt this text to the side a little bit. I want to translate it to the right a little bit, and I'm going to move this text up a little bit, and this is going to be where the text disperses into little particles. So we're moving it just at the end. So move to the side here, and that's pretty cool. We'll ease these keyframes, hit F9, and now we'll hop into the second noise effector that we created, and this will control the dispersion. So we could use the noise effector from the previous one that we created, but we can't, because this noise effector is only affecting the z-axis. This second noise effector is affecting x, y, and z. So We'll hit a keyframe for the noise amplitude right here when the text is all intact. And then we'll move to the end here. So this is the end. This is where our animation ends. And we will crank up the noise amplitude so everything's kind of just dispersed out like this. And of course you can do more to add more dynamic transitions to the end here, but I'm gonna make it very simple. So what we have is our text dispersing while moving to the top right hand corner, and this is where we're gonna blur things out. So I'm gonna hit U once again to show all the keyframes, and I want to easy ease the noise effector as well. And I want to go to the graph editor and really ease the beginning. So I want to slowly ease out and then really just destroy the whole thing. We'll just adjust some of this. So just like that. So what we have now is a lot of extrusion, forms the text, and then breaks apart and moves to the side. So that's looking pretty good. I'm going to go into the paths object here, and we can change the color of this whole thing. So I'm going to select kind of like this blue teal color. You can actually select individual colors for individual renderers, like such as the points or the lines, but in this case everything's kind of taken the color of the vertices here. So I'm going to select something like that, and let's go ahead and create the basic camera animation first. So I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to create a new null object, and we'll duplicate it. We'll call this one controller. We'll call this one the dolly. All right, we're going to make these nulls 3D nulls, and then we'll create a camera. So layer new camera, and we will create a new camera. We will create a very basic rig. So we'll link the camera to the controller, and we'll parent the controller to the dolly. So right now we're not going to use the camera yet. We're going to be using the controller to control the camera in the position here. So hit P on the keyboard to show the position, hold down Shift and click on R to bring up the rotation as well. So now we have the position and the rotation. We'll go to the very beginning, and I want to move the camera or the null, the control null, all the way to the very beginning of the grid here. So here we have, just want to start right here, and we'll hit a keyframe for the position. I also want to tilt this into Z rotation, so maybe negative 18 or so. Hit a keyframe for that. So now we want to go to where the text comes into place here around this keyframe, and I want to set the position back to 0. So now we're kind of just zooming back into place. And right before we land to the final position, I want to change the Z rotation back to 0. I usually like to, when it comes to text or logos, I like to, make the whole camera rotate on the proper axes or the proper rotation right before the logo is actually, full again. So it kind of gives us a chance to kind of read it first. So it's going to finish rotating first and then kind of just stop. And this is how I like to do all logos and text and type and stuff like that. So now we have that done. Let's go ahead and work on our dolly here. So for the dolly, I'm going to hit P for the position, and we'll just go to the beginning and we'll just hit a keyframe for the position. We'll move to the end, and I just kind of want it to bring it closer to us. So we'll just increase it by, let's say, 300 pixels. So no matter what happens, if the controller is stopped, our dolly is still moving forward a little bit. It's going to bring our text closer to us, and it's just going to give us a very subtle movement when the camera isn't actually moving. So this is good. So let's go ahead and close it up. Let's go ahead and do some of the stylization effects here. So right now we have no background. This is on transparency. So let's go ahead and create a new background layer. So create a new solid. We'll call it BG, and we'll kind of make it a very, very dark royal blue, as After Effects calls it. Just something like that. Drop it in the background, and let's go ahead and add some quick focusing letterboxing, because I know you guys love letterboxing here. So I'm going to be using my InstaFilm script, which you can download at thecreativedojo.net. Links will be in the video description or post down below. But I'm going to create a 720p letterbox, and maybe we can actually decrease the color a little bit for the background, maybe something like that. And let's go ahead and create another new solid, and we'll call this one flare. And this one should be black because we will be adding it or screening it into our background. We'll drag it underneath everything, and we will go to effect. We'll go to video copilot and apply optical flares, and we'll go to options here, and I'm going to select pro preset to preset, but it doesn't really matter what preset you use. We'll hit OK. Essentially, you can even use a solid for this. I'm just going to be adding some ambient light at the bottom here, and we'll go ahead and tint it kind of this blue color. And I'm gonna go ahead and hop into the editor here, and a lot of times when I'm using presets, whenever I do, I actually like to go ahead and modify it a little bit, or at least hide certain aspects of it. And it's something that I see a lot of people kind of just not do. They just slap on a preset and not even make any modifications to it. But hopefully you kind of make some modifications. I don't want those irises, you know, flashing up here. So I'm gonna go ahead and go to an effect, blur, and apply a fast blur. Repeat edge pixels and just blur out this flare a little bit. So we have a smoother kind of ambient glow from the bottom. And again, you don't need to use optical flares for this. You can use pretty much any solid with some mask, but I think this is a lot easier for me. I'll tone down the brightness just so we have a little glow at the bottom here. Something like that is fine. So we'll actually move it above Plexus, and we'll change the blending mode from normal to add. Something like that. Maybe control the tint a little bit. Something like that. All right, that's looking good. Let's go ahead and apply a few glows to this Plexus layer. So I'll apply a glow, drag it in there, and make sure it's at the bottom of the stack. And we'll just play around with the threshold. All right, we'll duplicate this glow, and we'll just make a few more modifications. Maybe increase the threshold, increase the radius for a larger glow, and then maybe decrease the intensity a little bit. All right, cool. Now, if you're doing a lot of glows, I would recommend working in 16 bits per channel. So you can right click here and go to depth. We'll switch it from 8 bits to 16 bits. Mine's already in 16 bits, but it gives you nicer glows, more natural glows, and it gets rid of a few banding issues that you may run into when working with gradients and such. It's just more color depth here. So working with 16 bits, you can still see a few bandings here, and that can be fixed with a grain layer. So I'm going to create a grain layer using my Instafilm script, and that will apply a really nice grain on top of everything. I'll move it below the letterboxing. So now we have some nice kind of organic grain. So if you scrub through the timeline, you can see that our animation is missing one very important thing, and that is motion blur. Now, unfortunately, Plexus does not support native motion blur that I know of. So the only way to do that is to use an actual plugin to do that. And now the results aren't as nice, but it does get the point across, and it does sell the effect, you know, decently enough. So I'm going to go to layer, new, and create an adjustment layer. And we'll call this one Real Smart Motion Blur. So this is actually a third-party plugin that you can get from Revision Effects called Real Smart Motion Blur. It does a great job at applying motion blur. But you can also, if you're using After Effects CC, the new version, you can actually do this without using a third-party plugin. After Effects actually comes with a built-in kind of Real Smart Motion Blur alternative under Time, and it's called Pixel Motion Blur, which essentially does the same thing. But if you're using CS6 or below, then you're going to need to use a third-party plugin such as Real Smart Motion Blur. I use Real Smart Motion Blur just because I think it works faster and it gives you nicer results. But one downside to not having full support over motion blur in Plexus is that sometimes you get some weird results using, I guess, artificial or post motion blur. So as you can see, we get some nice realistic motion blur here. I'm just going to leave it at default for now, and that automatically makes it look a lot better. Now, one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new adjustment layer for some quick color correction and color grading. Create a new adjustment layer, and we will call this one CC. We'll drop it underneath our grain layer, and for this I'm going to apply Magic Bullet Mojo just because it's very, very fast and easy. We'll decrease the Mojo amount. We'll play around with the balance here, Just warm it up a little bit. And then I want to decrease the punch. Too much contrast already, so play around with that very quickly. And then I'll go ahead and create another new adjustment layer here. So layer new, adjustment layer. And in the original demonstration, I added very, very subtle chromatic aberration here, just kind of give it a digital look. And the easiest way to do that is to use Magic Bullet Looks. It actually has a built-in chromatic aberration effect. So we'll go into the tools, we'll hop into chromatic aberration. We'll play around with some of these settings, just kind of bring out some of the chromatic aberration in there, something like that. And you know what, maybe we'll just throw in a vignette and increase the radius a little bit, and we'll hit finish. So now we have some more chromatic aberration at the edges. Looks very interesting. Just subtle little tweaks to make it look a little bit more interesting, because this is rather a simple animation here. Now, one last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on depth of field. Now, I believe our camera already has depth of field turned on. Yes, it's already turned on, except Plexus is not showing it because it's not turned on in Plexus. So if we go to Creative Dojo, text, we go down to the actual Plexus, I guess, base station, we can actually turn on depth of field. We turn it back to on, or to camera settings. So right now, nothing's really tweaked. Let's go ahead and go find the actual place where our text is actually supposed to be in focus. And I want to go into the depth of fields within the camera. We'll go into focus distance, and we want to adjust our focus distance to where the final position is actually in focus. You can see that we have some depth of field. I want to turn down the aperture to around 12. And then by looking at this animation, I think we need to adjust a little bit of the triangulation renderer here. So I'm going to go to the beginning here, and we don't see that much triangulation in the beginning. So I want to increase the maximum distance to maybe around 40 or so. So we have a little bit more triangulation in the beginning. And then I may want to adjust the points renderer as well. See, the points are kind of thick right now. So I want to go into the points renderer and hit keyframe for the point size. Maybe at the beginning, the point size should be smaller. So at this point here, we'll keep it at maybe 1.5. And then in the beginning, we want it to be a lot smaller, so maybe 0.5. Just so they're more subtle here. Now, one last thing we forgot to do was actually create the out of focus effect at the very end, where the shadow particles turn into kind of like out of focus bits here. So right around here, I'm going to go ahead and create one last adjustment layer, and I promise you this is the last adjustment layer that we're going to create. We'll create an adjustment layer, we'll put it below everything, under all the color correction stuff. We'll call this out of focus. And to do this effect, I'm going to blur everything out. I'm going to apply a Frisch Luft out of focus effect. Now, this is an actual third-party plugin, but of course you can do the exact same thing using the camera lens blur effect within After Effects built in. So you don't need a third-party plugin to do this. I'm going to use a third-party plugin just because I have it and I think it works better. So I'm going to turn on the keyframes for the text layer to see where things are. I'm going to go, kind of like right after the text starts to kind of fade away, I'm going to go back to the out of focus effect here, hit a keyframe, and about 3/4 of the way, I'm going to crank this up to around 30%, or I guess numerical value 30 for the radius, so it kind of gives us this really nice kind of bokeh blurred out effect here. That's pretty nice. Now also in the original demonstration, I also created kind of a shine in the beginning here. So if we go to the beginning of the animation, I created kind of the shine for the triangular renderers here. So for that, I'm going to go ahead and go to the Creative Dojo text here. And we could use an adjustment layer, but I promise you guys we wouldn't use an adjustment layer anymore. So we'll just apply it here. So we'll go to trap code shine. And of course you can use CC light versus CC light rays, whatever works for you. I'm going to zoom out. I'll put the source point at the left hand corner here, at the bottom here. We'll change the transfer mode from none to add, so it's going to add it to our Plexus stuff here. I also go to the colorize section and turn the colorize from 3 color gradient to none, so it's going to use the original colors here. And then we will also crank down the ray length a little bit to around 0.8. And then we can also tone down the shine opacity to around 80%, just so it's not so intense. So something like 75. So we'll start at 75. We'll move forward right around here. And then once it starts getting busy, we'll hit a keyframe for the shine opacity. We'll hit U on the keyboard. We'll just kind of move forward here. So right here, things are kind of blown out and kind of busy. So we definitely don't want any shine here. It will turn the shine opacity down to 0. So we have something like that. We'll scroll down here. We'll just easy ease these keyframes. The shine doesn't last forever, just at the very beginning when things are very subtle. Now one last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the flare, and the flare is kind of still, so I want to go to flicker, and we'll add a slight flicker to the flare just to make it some more dynamic looking flare here. Set the speed and amount to 15, so the flare is kind of flickering just a little bit, and we'll just tweak some of this curves here. I added these curves in, just quick contrast, and then I'm going to go to the project panel here. I'll drag this composition into a new comp. This will be our final comp, and this is where I like to do all the sharpening and stuff like that, but in this case I'll just do a quick opacity fade. So set a keyframe, we'll move maybe like half a second, turn it on to 100. We'll go to the end here, and I want the animation to kind of cut off right around here. So we'll trim the comp, and we'll go forward. We'll set the opacity to around 100% around here, and then we'll fade it off to 0 here. And we'll select all the keyframes, easy ease it, and we'll do a quick RAM preview. So that's pretty much it, guys. That's essentially how you create a text transition within Plexus. Very interesting, very dynamic. Of course, this uses a lot more tweaking. I would definitely highly suggest you tweak around with some of the settings within Plexus, because there are certain times in this transition where things get a little bit too busy, too complex, and things get overblown and the highlights get blown out and stuff like that. So definitely tweak some of the stuff in Plexus. Tweak some of the sizes of things, such as the lines renderer and the points renderer and the triangular renderers and stuff like that. Tweak some of that stuff, adjust some of the glow so you avoid some blown out highlights and stuff like that. So definitely tweak the color correction, color grading. But this is just a really fast run through on how I kind of created the original animation. Definitely experiment with it and create your own stuff. Hopefully you realize that Plexus is a very dynamic and very interesting and fun plugin to play with to create some pretty amazing stuff. So check it out. Links will be in the post down below to download a free demo of Plexus at aescripts.com. If you guys have any further questions, feel free to leave them in the comments down below and get them to you as soon as I can. But once again, my name is Vincent Nguyen from the Creative Dojo, and I'll see you guys in the next tutorial.